Good morning. This morning we're talking with Dennis Woytek, who's going to tell his story. I'm Larry Woods with the Veterans Breakfast Club. I served in the Air Force from 1966 to 1970 and spent October of 67 to 68 at Tuiwa, Vietnam in 2 Corps as part of the 31st Security Police Squadron. So good morning, Dennis. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I'm very happy that I'm able to be here and share some of the stories. Hopefully, they're all true.
Well, having talked to you a little bit earlier, I know they are, and I know they're kind of funny. So I don't want to get in the way in having you talk. But when did you first enter the service, number one? And number two, how did you end up becoming a Seabee? And three, exactly explain what a Seabee is, because a lot of people may not know.
Okay, first of all, I joined the Navy in 1967. I graduated from high school in 67, and around, I think it was September, I I thought, well, okay, if I get drafted, I'm going to Vietnam. So I'll join the Navy. I've had some photography skills. So maybe I'll be a photographer on a ship in the Mediterranean. So I joined the Navy, went to boot camp, spent the winter in Great Lakes. It's a great place to spend winter. And then as I was going through the motions, the the orders came for me to my duty station. First duty station was Port Hueneme, California. Of course, I didn't know that's how you pronounced it. It looked like Hunamimi or something to me. And I had, wow, this is great. I'm going to California, and I'm a CE. What is a CE? So doing some talking around, oh yeah, construction electrician. You're going to be a CB. I'm going, okay, that's great. Now tell me, what is a CB? So they informed me that it's kind of like your Marine, you're kind of like a Navy, but you're also the master of getting things done that seemed impossible. I go, oh, okay, good. I think I can do that. And you're going to be working on electrical systems. Okay, well, I knew things. I had electricity and electronics when I was in high school. I went to a technical high school. So I had that, I had a little bit of that experience. So there I was off to California. And they say, oh, by the way, after your A school in California, you're going to Vietnam. I go, oh, I guess that's not the Mediterranean, is it? And I guess I'm not going to be a photographer. But I learned all about Seabees and watched the John Wayne movie, which I have a DVD copy of it somewhere here. But we were forced to go to the theater at Port Hueneme and watch the movie all the way through. And I think it's only the second movie that John Wayne actually gets killed in. So he gets killed at the end. Anyhow, that's what how I learned the Seabees and their history for in World War II. And later on, it was a job for me being a Seabee. I did some electrical work and things, but later on, I really fully understood and was very proud to have been brought into the CB club. And I guess some of my skills as a CB continued in my later life too. But we had our A school in California, had a very nice time, Southern California. Learned how to do all sorts of things, including shoot a gun, because I wasn't really didn't have any guns in our house. So we did the combat training and did it with the Marines and went to Point Magoo, and we'd go out there and on the rifle range. And I guess I was pretty good at it. So that was probably a good thing. And then we got our orders saying, okay, you're going to Vietnam and you're going to a place called Dong Ha. Well, I didn't know what Dong Ha was. I mean, I had no idea. But we landed in Da Nang. And Da Nang was a pretty, I could say in 68, it was fairly calm. Like I'm going, where's the war? Is this, we heard jets flying over and occasionally you'd hear some explosions and things, but I go, wow, let's go to China Beach. Let's go get some cheeseburgers and things. And then they said, okay, get on this C-130 and you're going up to Dong Ha. By the way, the Dong Ha is as closest to the DMZ as we could possibly get. I go, wait, that's like probably a dangerous place. And yes, it was. We landed. Well, we landed, but they didn't stop the plane, as was the case with many guys who have stories about going to Vietnam. The plane, they said the airport's under attack, so we're just going to drop you off. I go, well, if the airport's under attack, why bother landing? Let's go back to Dang. Anyhow, they opened the back of the plane and let us roll out and threw our sea bags out. And sure enough, the airport was under rocket attack at the time. So that was my kind of introduction to, as an 18-year-old. Oh, yes, this is a war, and yeah, you can get killed if you're not careful. That's me driving the one of the utility vehicles we had. This is in, by the way, this is in Quang Tri. This is maybe going to jump around a little bit, but that's one of our. And that bend you see in the top thing, I
Mhm.
think it's because something fell on it. And as you can see, the door handle didn't work, so we had a kind of a latch there that we would use.
I love the
That's
peace sign that you had.
yeah, we definitely were a bunch of hippies. That's me climbing a telephone pole, a 90-foot telephone pole. Why am I doing that? This is Dong Ha. This is the Dong Ha International Airport. So this was my first real exercise in landing in a war zone. You can see the little triangles at the bottom of the screen. That's a minefield, evidently, and evidently I walked through one of those when I had too much to drink one night. This is the combat base. You can see the wonderful little four-holer that was on the right-hand side. The watchtowers. Every time I play Jimi Hendrix all along the watchtower, I think about those guys that were up there in those towers. A lot of dirt here. We had plenty of sandbags to supposedly protect us. I mean, it's great if the rocket or the mortar hit outside of your outside of your hooch, it was okay. If it hit the roof, well, then that's a whole other problem.
We threw a couple of extra sandbags on the roof because
Yeah,
this
we
was
did too, and I think we did them just to keep the keep the metal from blowing away.
exactly.
Here's the laundry facility where you could have your laundry done. We had a little entertainment area called the Red Barn. There's a movie screen on top. They would show movies, I think, on Sunday nights. Sometimes we get ice cream, not often. And we had the different entertainment groups come in and perform. The water treatment plant at Dong Ha was vital because that gave us our drinking water, which is fairly safe. So we were in Dong Ha for a while, and they discovered that we built this combat base a little too close range for the North Vietnamese. So they moved a lot of us to Quang Tri, which was a couple miles south of Dong Ha. This is the airport with the helicopters in the bays. This is our combat base at 301 CBMU. That's Construction Battalion Maintenance Unit. So we maintained things for the Marines and for the Seabees, and we also managed to do things for the Air Force and for the Army too. I'll get on to that story. That is not sand. That is not snow. That's sand. Does not snow in Vietnam, as far as as far as I know. They trucked in sand to kind of help with the mud situation, because during the monsoons it got a little muddy. This is a band of CEs. Uh, there were 6 of us who maintained the electrical systems. A lot of the time, for some reason, we didn't wear shirts a lot of the time. The club with the all important refrigerator in the back, keeping the beer cold. The mash unit, the mash unit, I have some pictures somewhere of the generators. One of my first jobs with the Seabees in Vietnam was to construct a generating system for the mash unit, for the medical unit there. And we came up with a 3 generator system, one online, one in standby, and one being doing maintenance on. And that was kind of my first real experience of building a really powerful generating system. But the medical staff at the hospital was very appreciative because now they didn't have to worry about outages. We go to Quang Tri City periodically. I don't know why we would go, but we would go there. This is the bridge that led from Quang Tri Combat Base to Quang Tri City. And we had a shopping center, the Quang Tri Shopping Center. You can see I'm being sarcastic.
You can get all your essentials there.
You could get a haircut, you could buy all sorts of things there. And the bus stop there is one of the bus stops, the Quang Tri bus there.
I noticed it's air conditioned.
Oh yeah. And if you notice, some of the walls are built out of pop cans, or some people call them soda. But here we call them pop. So there's a lot of Coke cans that they would flatten and they would turn into walls. Interesting. This is what happens during the monsoon season. You get a little bit of mud, and they had to be pulled out by by a truck. Yeah. Transportation in Vietnam was pretty easy. We would never get on one of these. But the Vietnamese love to get on them. As you can see, they packed them. They would be on the roof. There would be, if you've ever seen pictures of people on buses in India, pretty much the same thing. They put as many people on that bus as they possibly could. This is before the road was paved. It's now a 4-lane highway with a boulevard. This was the radio station. So I was with the Seabees. And I heard they were building a radio station, or trying to build a radio station up on Camp Red Devil, which was about half a mile or a mile from the SeaBee base. The SeaBee base was down by the airport. And this Camp Red Devil was up on a higher area. And I heard they wanted to start this radio station. I go, I was a disc jockey in 1964. So I had experience being a disc jockey. I also had experience working on transmitters, because you had to have a license to operate the transmitter, even if you were, you couldn't be just a disc jockey. You had to work the transmitters. So I knew transmitters, I knew electrical systems, and generators. And so I went up to talk to these guys, and Doug Wilson, who was the lieutenant in charge, he was an Army guy. And he just kind of fell in love with me. He says, "Oh, wow, I wonder if we could get you to come up here and help us out." And I go, "Well, yeah, you probably have to talk to my commanding officer, because I'm with the Seabees." And his question was, "What the heck are the Seabees?" So after a little explanation, he talked to my commanding officer. My commanding officer said, "Sure, you can go temporary duty assignment to AFVN." So we had a trailer with the star on it. That's an Army trailer. It's a television, self-contained television unit. I'm going, television in Vietnam? What the heck? We started that up later, but we had a little temporary tower. You can see the tent. That was the sleeping quarters. And there's a shower there. I think the other unit's a shower. And then the tower there, we had no idea what we're going to do with that tower. So this is what it looked like when we first got there. The Seabees came up. I got them to come up and build us some hooches, because living in a tent was not the best thing in the world. We also had to build towers, and none of us knew how to build a tower, but we knew it needed a good foundation. So us Northerners who think that we have a frost freeze cycle, so you need to build a foundation that's pretty deep, not knowing it doesn't snow in Vietnam. We built this 20-foot deep, and I don't know, I forgot how wide, but that was our support of the tower. Yes, it was excessive, but we didn't know. We also didn't know how to build a tower. We talked to the guys down in Saigon, said, "Yeah, we'll send somebody up in a couple months." Well, we didn't want to wait a couple months, so we talked to somebody. Said, "You use something called a gin pole." Uh, is that like vodka? Is they explained it? It's kind of a helper pole. You can see in that picture, the guy standing at the close to the top. That's a gin pole on top of that, and you would use that to hoist up the next section, and you just keep like caterpillaring until you got to the top. And that was how we built the tower. We also had to build a generator shed. You can see the small generator at the bottom. Those were notoriously bad. So I managed to acquisition. I'll show you here in a second the tower. Seabees helped build a protection unit. Whoops. Okay, I'll get to that generator thing in a minute. We uh, we got to use a flamethrower because we had a lot of vegetation problems, and the stuff we were using, the what we determined later to be Agent Orange, that wasn't working as fast. But a flamethrower would really burn down the weeds. None of us used the flamethrower before. The instructions were light the wick on the front of the thing and then squeeze the trigger, and we did. We didn't realize that squeezing the trigger would put out a jet stream of flame. And as it put out that jet stream, we kind of lost control and we burned the outhouse down, which was horrible. There's the generator. This was a Cadillac, and I acquired this by going down to Da Nang to get some cheeseburgers and also do a reconnaissance mission to see what we could acquire. Um, so I managed to find this generator. It was in a crate. It was marked 200 kilowatt generator, and there was a poor Marine who was guarding this stash, and he didn't realize that the little things on my collar, the little crows, I was just a petty officer. I wasn't anybody, but he thought I was like a general or something. Saluted me, and I said that I want that box. My Seabees going to come and pick it up. So the Seabees came, picked it up, took it up to us in Dong Ha. Now the problem with that is that generator has to be loaded down to 20 to at least 80%. Well, at the radio and TV station, we couldn't get more than 20% load, and after a while, it will burn itself out. So we figured, okay, how are we going to share this power? One of the things we did not have was food service. We could go down to the SeaBee mess hall and get some food, but next to us was an Army replacement company, and they had hot food. So we made a deal with them. We'll provide you with an electrical circuit, poles and drops and all that, and we'll provide you with steady power if you give us one hot meal a day. That was the deal. Now the other problem is we needed diesel to run this generator. So on the other side of us was a Marine transportation unit, which had fuel. And we told them, hey, you want steady power, you want consistent power? We will provide you with power 24 hours a day, stable 60 cycle, 120 volt exactly, if you provide us with diesel. So they provided us with diesel, and there was born we called it the Pollock Power and Light Company. The radio station we built.
I think
Go ahead.
most people will never realize, if they see a movie like The Great Escape, where they had the James Garner character was called the Scrounger, they would think that that's all made up. but anybody that served in Vietnam and in most other conflicts know that scrounging was a real thing. And you could, if you had the ingenuity and the chutzpah, and I'm using a nice clean term to uh, kind of explain it, you could end up with things that you weren't supposed to have.
Oh yeah, and I got to tell you, the Seabees were probably very good at it. I think that one of
Absolutely.
the reputation of the Seabees is that number one scroungers or requisitioners or comshaw or so this was the first thing we did was the Seabees of course built us hooches and built us a radio station. They had no idea what they were doing other than they built a hooch, and I said, okay, we need to make this look like a radio station, which just consisted of a couple turntables and some equipment, a couple cans of Pepsi, the all important ashtray, and we got on the air with a little 1,000 watt generator, and we would be on. The schedule is up there on the hanging down from the ceiling, and I zoomed into it one day just to remind me of what we were doing. I was on from 6 till 9 o'clock with the Good Morning Vietnam show. Now, the Good Morning Vietnam, when the movie came out, that's when I discovered that I wasn't the guy who came up with that slogan. It was this guy in Saigon named Adrian Cronauer 2 years before me. And so I was really disappointed that it wasn't my idea. But I started out every morning with "Good Morning Vietnam," and you could hear people throw things around, much like what was described in the movie. And I had dinner with Adrian a couple times before he passed away, and we talked about his experience in Saigon, where they had maid service and food and the bustle of the city, and we were up in the middle of nowhere where we had basically hardly anything. You'll notice in the right hand picture there's a stack of LPs, long play records, 12-inch records. But if you look in the left hand picture, you'll notice something a little different. 45 RPM records. Those were not approved by Armed Forces Radio. The LPs were, because they controlled the music that they would send us, and each disc would have maybe one side would be all top 40 stuff, and the other side would be maybe some classical and maybe some country. But my friends at the radio station in the Erie would send me a box of the current 45s. So a lot of them we weren't supposed to be playing, or we weren't authorized to play, but we did anyhow, because where we were, who cares? You couldn't send us any, and couldn't give us any a worse place. Uh,
That was always the wonderful line that we used. If we did something that on our own it was not quite up to code, say, "What are you going to do to me? Send me to Vietnam?"
yeah, yeah. You see where I'm wearing civilian clothes. I don't know why we would dress up as civilian clothes, aviator glasses. Um, let's see if there's, oh yeah. So there's me doing my Good Morning Vietnam thing. And there's also me on the hospital ship. I got to spend 30 days on the hospital ship. They had a problem with their radio station. It wasn't working. And I said, give me a soldering gun and some pliers and things. And so I got their radio station working. Probably the most famous voice to anybody who served in Vietnam was Chris Noel. She's currently running a home for vets down in Florida, and has been dedicated to Vietnam veterans for so long. Have had dinner with her a couple times, and just a wonderful person. But she gave up a very lucrative movie career to go to Vietnam and entertain the troops. And when she came back, she found out she was not getting any movie contracts. It pretty much blacklisted her. So she decided, you know what? So she did the Date with Chris. And if you're anybody who's been to Vietnam and remembers, "Hi, love, That's Chris Noel. Very, just a wonderful person. So don't ask me how I had all that hair.
Well,
I
you
still
still
have,
got good looking hair.
it's not that color anymore, but there was I had a lot of hair for some, and I don't know why they didn't make us cut it off, but that's me on Monkey Mountain, and that's on Boom Boom Rock. So anybody who's ever been to Monkey Mountain and knows of Boom Boom Rock, that's Boom Boom Rock. That is where the radio station was. I went back to Vietnam in 2016, no, 2015. I went back with 11 Seabees. We all returned too, by the way. And our goal was to go to these places where we served. And one of the places I wanted to go to was the radio station, or the site of. I knew it wouldn't be there any longer. And this Papa San invited us into his house. He was really very cordial to us, and we talked about the war. This was where the hooches were. The one picture where you can see the hooches. This is what it looks like now. This is the Army Replacement Company, or where the Army Replacement Company was. It's amazing when you go back and see these. The topography is the same, but the things have changed. So that was what the radio station looked like. I don't know where this is. I've lost this badge somewhere. It's probably somewhere in this house, and they'll probably find it after I'm long gone. But that enabled us to get on any flight as long as there was room anywhere in the country. So we could fly down to Da Nang. So here's before and after. 1968 with the hooches, and then in 2015, I have a couple of these that show you what it looked like before, and then what it looked like after. I think we've seen some of the only air conditioners we had were these to keep the television place cool. So that's our little visual tour of my of my time. There's a lot more. I have thousands of slides, and I've just started scanning some of them in to preserve them, because after a while. So that was 1968, 69. And those slides are getting pretty old, but so I've been starting to scan some of them in.
I've got to tell you, Dennis, when you were showing the pictures of the base, it brought back lots of memories, because even though Tuiwa was on the South China Sea and we were far, far south of where you were at, those pictures look almost identical. I mean, the landing on the tarmac doesn't look any different. The hooches look exactly the same. The looking out over the perimeter where I was at looks exactly the same. It's just amazing. To almost every place, I guess, except maybe the Mekong Delta that didn't have hills and mountains. Things didn't look that much different on whether it was an air base or an army base or marine, unless you were just where you had absolutely nothing and just completely living in the bush. But if you had structures, they were really very similar. So really appreciate you showing those.
Yeah, and if you look underneath the structures, I don't know if you remember this, but underneath on the floor of the structures, by every bunk, there was a trap door, and that trap door would lead into a trench, and that was if you couldn't make it out to the bunkers, you could open that door and jump into the trench. Of course, in the summertime, during the hottest season, it was filled with rodents.
Yeah.
And during the rainy season, it was filled with snakes. But it was either that or get yourself killed. So
I
the
don't know if we
bases
were
were.
lucky. Yeah, I don't know if we were lucky or what, but given Tuiwa was built pretty much on the sand, we had concrete slabs. We didn't have anything underneath the hooches and buildings.
Yeah, they just took
You had to make it outside into the bunker if you were inside when something happened.
Yeah, they had a ditch, we call them ditch diggers, but would build that trench. Um, yeah, the bases, and when we went back in 2015, it was amazing that we could go to these places, and we gave the people that arranged for all the visas and all that for us. Um, we gave them locations. We told them either cities or gave them maps. I had some Google Maps of the area that was where the radio station was, and actually going to the radio station was really one of my highlights. I mean, going to the places in Dong Ha and in Quang Tri where the bases were, which of course now are cities there that are there. Actually, the main street of Dong Ha is was where the runway was, and the ramp that is in Dong Ha where they unloaded gravel and things, and where my generator came in. That is still there. They're still used as a ramp. But anyhow, when we were at going to the radio station, we got to this bridge, and it was kind of a sketchy looking bridge. And the bus driver said, "I'm not sure if the bridge will hold our bus." We had a little like a wedding bus, and the guy said, "Just drive fast." We had no idea how we'd get back because it was, kind of it was a dirt road. But he drove fast across the bridge, and we got there and got to the radio station. And we're talking to the papasan who had a watermelon and a tapioca plantation, and he let us traipse around in that. There was a Connex box that was kind of far over uh, towards the end, and he says, "You want to go? You want to go in there?" Through the interpreter, of course. I said, "No, no, because I know it's probably in there. Snakes. I'm definitely afraid of snakes." So I, I asked him. I said, there was a huge piece of concrete that where the tower stood, and of course the reason why he had such a nice house is because they reclaimed the tower. They recycled sold the
Mhm.
metal from the tower, so he's able to build a very nice house. So he took me into his kitchen, and in his kitchen on the floor is this concrete. That was his floor, and he said they couldn't move it because it was too deep. Said I told him through the interpreter, "You're not going to ever be able to move this except with a pile of dynamite because it's 20 feet deep." And sure enough, in the corner where we etched our names in the concrete, still there. I cried. It was just one of those moments of. So as we're walking up, I should probably put some of those pictures together, but I have a picture of him and I together as we're walking out, and he's running to me because I gave him $20, and the interpreter said he wants to know if this is real because evidently they print money in Vietnam that they use to give to the gods, and it's fake money. It's not real.
Mhm.
He wanted to know if this was real or if this was fake, and I said, "No, it's real." So $20 to him was probably maybe a couple hundred spending wise. But as I'm saying goodbye to him, I look up, and there's two telephone poles, and there's a cable stretched across the two telephone poles over the road. I go, "I'll be a son of a gun." That is still there. That's how we got the transmission from the radio studio transmitter to the antenna, which was across the road and down into a little swampy area. That was still there since 1968. Those two telephone poles are still there, and there's whatever cable is running. We couldn't dig through the road. That's why we ran the cable up and down. But just to be there and to see how welcoming the Vietnamese people were, because we we had sort of a conflict there, and we did not know what to expect from meeting the Vietnamese again. We found out the kids just loved us, even though they couldn't pronounce any of our names, because we couldn't pronounce their names either, unless it was Nguyen. Um, but just to be able to talk with them and to sit with them and to realize that, you know, we were on either the same side or maybe opposite sides at the time. And then now their country is turned into a tourist mecca, and very welcoming to us. So we were glad to go back. And it was some guy's brainy idea. We were in Washington D.C. for a Veterans Day, and sitting at the bar one night, somebody said, "Hey, I wonder if we could go back." And sure enough, years later, we did find a way to go back. And my wife, of course, thought this these 11 Seabees, they're gonna wreak havoc on the country, because Seabees have a tendency to have kind of that reputation. And she said, "Whatever you do, don't get thrown in jail." Well, we were I can't think where we were, but we got stopped by the police and we were escorted to a Vietnamese prison where we were locked up in a cell, all 11 of us, not having any idea what they were saying. The interpreter was with them, and we were in there for about 2 hours before we finally were released. And the interpreter had to pay a fee or a fine or something. He said, they said you crossed the border. I go, we weren't anywhere near a border, you know, unless Laos has been moved to the South China Sea or Cambodia. You know, we were nowhere near a border. Anyhow, they were, you know, they knew we were Americans. They could mess with us, and they certainly did. So when I got back home, I go, yeah, I told my wife, I said, remember, you think about us getting locked up in prison, you know? Well, we did. And she said, I knew it. I knew you guys. And no, we had nothing to do. We were completely innocent. We didn't cause any problems to do that. But you know, when I look back on the time that I served in Vietnam, first of all, I'm really proud that I was able to serve. Very happy that I made it back. There are, you know, 5 of my buddies that their names are etched on the wall down in D.C. But I was, for some reason, God had a sense of humor, uh, and let me return to to lead a fairly productive life and an interesting life for that matter. But so that's a little bit of my story about being a CB.
Well, let me
There's
ask
some
you
boot
a
camps.
question. Well, let me
Go
ask
ahead.
you a question. CBs are engineers. You do a lot of building, putting things up, taking things down, often getting in before people in order to set stuff up. And that's the reputation. Air Force, we had the Red Horse, which were the engineering unit, and they did the same types of things. CBs are probably more the most famous in all the service because of the John Wayne movie, but also it was one of the first that really got out there and did the construction kind of work. But being in Dong Ha and Quang Tri and up in I Corps near the DMZ, um, you guys were not a quote combat unit where you weren't going out on missions. But in talking to you before we got started with this interview, uh, you told me that you actually did get out in the field a little bit, which is not necessarily the norm. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I since I was doing things for the radio, um, we we had a telephone line that connected us, or an audio line connected us with Saigon. So theoretically, we could hear the Saigon radio shows because they were the network, and they, you know, they had the morning show and all that. But usually that line was either too noisy or was non-existent, or we heard some Vietnamese talking on it. So we would do our own thing. We decided, okay, we're not even going to use the Saigon station. We were going to do our own shows, which meant we had to come up with our own news. Well, we had a teletype machine. I don't know where we got the teletype machine, but it wasn't connected to anything. But we discovered that if we managed to acquire a receiver, a radio receiver, we could pick up UPI Tokyo. or Hong Kong or wherever, we could get the news. Of course, that was uncensored news. We weren't, that we were self-censoring, I guess, back then. So we would get the news, and we would know what we could and couldn't talk about. It wasn't quite as drastic as the movie Good Morning Vietnam portrayed. So in order for us to get something else besides the wire service, for the radio and also for the television station, who would have thought television in Vietnam? We didn't have film. We couldn't go out with a camera and shoot film and have it developed and then show it on the nightly news. Of course, videotape was barely invented back then. So I decided I'll go out on a couple search and destroy missions just to gather some interviews and gather some news, and so we could do that. And we had very good relationships with the Army and with the Marines. So they put me in a helicopter, and we flew out to, I don't know where. I have no idea. They call it Hill 23 or something. I wish I could remember where we went. And then we landed. The first time I fell out of the helicopter, as it was in kind of the landing, I fell out about 10 feet, I guess, into the swamp. Landed on my camera, which is the number one mistake. You always land on your back. You don't land on your camera. I dented the lens. I still have the camera with the dented lens. Uh, it's a 35 millimeter Pentax that I bought on my way to Vietnam in one of the stops, in one of the refueling stops. So I went out and experienced what it was like to be in the bush with these guys. Now I was only out for like 1 or 2 days, and then I'd go back. Those guys would be out for weeks at a time. But I would get some interviews with them. I had a little portable cassette recorder, so I could do some interviews. I get some pictures, send a couple pictures off to Stars and Stripes, and got a couple of them published. I found them the other day. I go, wow, I have the original black and white prints of the of those times out there. I was out there once when they had a chaplain came out and did a mass for the guys. We're in the middle of this jungle, and here's a priest during a mass for the guys. So it was an interesting, and it was just really scary experience, because being on the combat base in the Quang Tri or in Dong Ha was relatively safe, other than rockets, and mortars could come into you at any time. It was relatively safe. But being out there in the jungle with these guys, and I also had to take part in the protection area. I had my M16 with me, and it wasn't like I was just out there taking pictures and doing interviews. I had to be an active member of the team, and that put a lot of, I think, stress on me at the time. But I was really happy to be able to do that. Happy is a word now, I guess, but back then it was like, okay, I need to do this, and I need to also come back, because I supposedly had a girlfriend waiting for me when I got out, left when I got out of Vietnam. And I also had parents. So I was, bound and determined I was going to try and make it home, other than in a body bag. But those two experiences out in the bush were just, I always have such respect for the Marines and the Army who were out there, and of course, also for the Air Force. The pilots and things. They just really they did the yeoman's job, so to speak. Where I was just kind of I think I was just a small player in the whole. I built a radio station, which brought back the voice of home. Probably made guys cry at the same time, because they would hear a song, that would bring back memories of them back with their girlfriend or with their wife or whatever. And then the television, which would bring. So the television, I don't know how many people really understood why we were building a television station. First of all, we didn't have to build it; we just had to build a tower, and mount the antenna on. The TV station was self-contained in that trailer. There was a small studio about the size of a little bigger than the phone booth. There was a control room, an area where the projectors were, and the area where the transmitter was. So it was all self-contained. And I'm going, why are we building a television station? Why are they going to, this is a war zone. Who's going to watch? Well, we found out later that they were selling TVs at the PX or BX, whatever they were called, little portable Sony battery powered television sets. And so we were on from, I think, 3 in the afternoon until maybe 9 or 10 at night. And we showed films that were supplied by Armed Forces Radio and Television Service, LA. I'm trying to remember how many detachments we had in Vietnam, but they would bicycle, what they call bicycling the films. So we would get like 8 big crates of film every week, and we would show those. And then after we showed them, we would pack them up, send them off, take them down to the airport where they would be picked up. And then we would get another shipment that came from one of the other stations. And hopefully, if they damaged the film, they were confident enough to splice the bad pieces back together. But sometimes we got films that you get halfway through the reel and all of a sudden, oh, gone. It's, oh, somebody forgot to splice that thing together. You can see I have a 16 millimeter projector behind me. I've been watching some of the films that for somehow made it home with me. I don't know why they made it home with me, but they made it home, including original episodes of Mission Impossible, Star Trek, a couple movies, and the story of Armed Forces Radio and Television Service, which was produced to show about how how this service got started, and some episodes of Shindig. So, but I have them, and periodically I put them on the old projector and show them to the kids, and they go, "Wow, that's a really noisy thing." And I have a splicer because the film is old, 1968, 69. That film is pretty old, so some of it is a little brittle. I had The Door with 7 Locks, which is a 3-reel kind of a spooky movie. Anyhow, so we did the television, and we have I have a memory of New Year's morning, and I was being woken up by my lieutenant saying, "We have some people from the Bob Hope tour, and they want to see the radio and TV station." I go, "Oh, sure." So I went out to meet them, and there were 3 ladies from Honey Limited. I have no idea. I've never heard of them before, but they were on the Bob Hope tour. I thought maybe Bob Hope is here. But the 4 of us crowded into that little phone booth studio, and we did a live television interview because there was we didn't have any way to record this. But I had 3 very scantily clad women all over me, trying to do this serious interview about why they were there and what it was like being on a tour. I wish we had some pictures of that, because that was it was the memory is there, but it's a visual memory. It's only in my head. So there's no way to actually prove that Honey Limited came to visit us. We never, we didn't get the big top USO shows. They came to Da Nang and Saigon and maybe a couple other places, but never up north. We would get like, I forgot. I don't know. I should probably try to figure out. But furthest north that Bob Hope came, it was probably Da Nang. I don't think he got any further north. But the USO groups we had were like Philippine bands that would do a very good job of imitating American rock and roll down to the accents. But that's all we had. And we weren't We weren't in the nice areas that had the comforts of kind of the comforts of home, but it was okay. I mean, we didn't feel bad. We didn't get Bob Hope. Um, One of the things, oh, when I was in Port Hueneme, ABC did something called Operation Entertainment, and they would go to military bases in the US and provide kind of USO type shows. And I don't know if they had, I don't think they had Bob Hope, because he was doing stuff in Vietnam. But these were, they had the Les Brown and the big band and some pretty famous people, and they would go around these bases. Well, they had one at Port Hueneme, and I go, so all of us, we were kind of required to go. So we showed up, and they put on the show. It was really nice. It had I don't know if it was Anne Margaret or who it was. Anyhow, good show. Years later, when I'm up in Alaska, in order for us to get movies to show on the Armed Forces television service in Alaska, where I was, we would have to go to Los Angeles, fly down to LA, spend a week in LA going through the catalog and picking out movies and films that we want to, eventually show. And then they would ship them up to us in Alaska. Well, as I'm going through there, I go, Operation Entertainment, Port Hueneme. Wow, the actual film of that show. I don't know how I acquired it, but it's in my collection of films. And as the camera pans, if you look really quickly, you see me for about half a second. I think I've tried to freeze that frame so I could, yeah. But the quality back then wasn't really like it is today.
So you
But
didn't even get your 15 minutes of fame. You got your half a second of fame.
yeah, but it was interesting that I was able to get that whole show,
Absolutely.
and to be able to watch it and remember. I remember it, uh, but it was able to, cool to be able to show that. I should digitize some of these things, because the film isn't going to last forever. Uh, it's the same with a lot of my records. A lot of my records I digitize because I still do radio every Monday through Friday from 7 to midnight on a station in Sarasota and a station in Erie. They're two different shows, but we do 60s, 70s, and some 80s music. And I talk a lot about, the music and its relationship to when I played it or when I heard it. And a lot of the stories about me being in Vietnam, like every time all along the Watchtower by Jimi Hendrix, I go,
Mhm.
I remember, what it was like. I remember those watchtowers, and I remember hearing that music, because that music does bring triggers a lot of memory for a lot of people. Hopefully, mostly good memories, but sometimes I'm sure they're not the most pleasant.
Well, I've got to tell you that somebody I'd never heard you because you got to in country after I had left, and you were in I Corps and I was stationed in 2 Corps, but we did have AFVN, and Chris Noel was obviously everybody's girlfriend, and the having that radio station to listen to was something that you're absolutely correct. I mean, it brought back home, and it was really emotional for all of us if you think back on it. So, even though I didn't hear you personally, I want to thank you for what you did because that was a lifeline to a lot of us. So that was really cool. Let me ask you another question as we're getting kind of towards the end here. Um, Once you came home, what was your reaction to coming back to the states? A lot of guys had different reactions. What was yours like?
My return to the U.S. after Vietnam, knowing my next duty station was Alaska. Who would have thought you're going from 120-degree days to 48 below days? The military has a great way of being cruel to people. Um, but so coming back from Vietnam, we went down to Da Nang and got on our on our flight back. It was a United flight, from what I remember, and it was very quiet until we got what the pilot came on and says, "We have cleared Vietnamese airspace," and all of a sudden it got so loud with cheers. The waitresses started bringing. Oh, I should have probably. I still have. They gave those little bottles of booze. You could have as much as you want. They didn't care. They
Oh.
just opened up the case and, well, I maybe had one or two, but the rest of them I put in my pocket. I brought them home. I have had one for each one of my children's at when they got married and the birth of their first child. And I think I have one or two bottles left. I said, well, when I go, you guys need to either drink it or throw it in the box with me. Um, but that flight back was, and we were all in military clothes, so we didn't even know what we were going to expect. We had no idea what to expect. We had a couple of fuel stops. They wouldn't let us off the plane, and then we landed at I forgot. I think we landed. I don't remember. I think it was San Francisco or Norton. I can't remember where we landed, but anyhow, we got off the plane and we started walking to the airport. And the stories about people yelling and screaming at Vietnam vets and throwing things at them, very true. We had people calling me baby killer. It was, we ran into the restrooms and got into civilian clothes as quickly as possible. We had to have military clothes, I guess, to fly, but we got into civilian clothes so we could kind of survive the what was a very hostile atmosphere. And we were surprised, because when we didn't hear about this, we heard about some protests, when we were in Vietnam, but never experienced anything like this. So we managed to get home. And when I got home, the language we used, we were Navy guys, and to this day, when I say one of those words, I always I used one of my Navy words again, and my children actually use that term, and the grandchildren actually. Oh, Judge is using Navy words again. I try not to as I get older. But anyhow, my first experience at being home, it was, I think, close to the 4th of July. And there were, some fireworks going off, and I'd be under the table. I mean, literally, bam, under the table. It was just a reaction. You didn't think about it. You just did it. And that happened a couple of times. And also when I asked to pass the F and salt or the F and pepper, and that's the first time I think my parents have ever heard me use words like that.
Yeah, those kind
So
of slip ups were unfortunate, but they did occur.
yeah, and I mean, just the way we talked when we were sailors. We were, we were in Vietnam trying to just survive our little lives. So uh, after that, I wore civilian clothes. I mean, it wasn't like I wasn't proud of being in the military. It was safer to wear civilian clothes. Now, when I had to fly military, of course, you had to have your uniform on. So, and I don't know where that is. Somewhere in my dress blues or in this house, it's probably where that badge is. Wherever it is in the house, we put it somewhere. But when we flew up to Alaska, I I landed in we landed in Anchorage, and I was out to Adak Island, which is at the very end of the Aleutian chain, almost Siberia. It's called the birthplace of the winds, and it's very true. It was always windy and cold out there. But when we landed there, there was a van. They picked me up at Adak International Airport, Revolution Airlines, by the way, I mean, it was a prop plane, and it was noisy and it was long. And I got to meet Bob Reeve, who owned Revolution Airlines later. He was a pilot. He had a patch over one eye, and I go, "How the heck can you fly when you don't have depth perception?" He says, "It's fine. I know the word." I got to fly out with him a couple times. Anyhow, so I landed at the airport, and these guys picked me up in the Armed Forces Radio and Television van. I say van, but it was more like it was held together with some baling wire and some masking tape. Took me to the radio and TV station in the what's called the Bearing Building, and they were down in the basement. The radio station, TV station, control room, a couple of offices, because they also ran the newspaper, the ADAC Times, for the island, very loosely based newspaper. They actually had me writing for it for some reason. Um, and then there was a bunk room. So there were four of us in this bunk room, which we didn't have to sleep in the barracks. Wow. We didn't have to eat in the mess halls. Whoa. They gave us money so we could eat at the Gidunk or the places on the island. They did get a McDonald's there many years later. There's pictures of it now because it's pretty much the base is abandoned. Um, about 2 weeks after that, I get called into the office with the lieutenant, and I don't remember his name, but he was very proud of my accomplishments. And there was a commander who was in with him. He was a Navy commander, and he said, "You realize that you never showed up for your duty station." I go, "Yeah, I'm here. Oops, sorry. I'm here at the radio." "No, your duty station was the Naval Communication Station. You're not supposed to be here in the radio and TV station." Here, these guys from Armed Forces Radio, because they found out I was coming, they kidnapped me literally and took me to the radio and TV station. Well, the Navy commander, because he had seen me on TV and heard me on the radio. And he thought, well, maybe this is a good place for him. So they actually assigned me permanent assignment to Armed Forces Radio and Television on ADAC. And I was never so thankful to be able to do that, because I wouldn't be out in the cold stringing wires or whatever the guys at the Naval Communication Station did. Certainly wouldn't be talking on the radio or being in someplace nice and warm. So and then I wound up, after a year, I met a girl. She was a school teacher. Yeah. So I had warmth and comfort. I had keys to the swimming pool. So when I would get off the air, I did the $10 o'clock $1 million movie, which was probably worth about 23 cents. I would go to, I'd love to go swimming, but it was closed. So the guy gave me the key to the pool, so I could go swimming after. So I'd go swimming and I'd go in the sauna there. And since I was the only person there, didn't necessarily have to wear any clothes. Well, maybe I shouldn't tell you this story. That's how I met this. That's how I met this teacher. Evidently, the guy who ran the pool thought it'd be nice if I had some companionship, so he gave her a key to the pool. So that's how we met. But after a year, my next duty station would have been Guam or Midway or, some piddly little island somewhere. And they said, well, you can extend and stay here, not extend, but you can stay here if you want. I go, yeah. I said, well, you have to go see a psychiatrist, because anybody who wants to stay here has got to be crazy. So I went to see a psychiatrist, and evidently I passed, because I said I had so many good things. I had a nice place to sleep. I didn't have to deal with drunks and the rowdiness of the barracks. I had tunnels that went everywhere, so I didn't even actually have to go outside, though we did. And I had a good life. So why would I want to go anywhere else? So I managed to finish my career in the Navy there. And actually, I think they let me out 3 months early because they were downsizing, and I was able to go to Seattle and get discharged. But the morning I was supposed to leave, I get a call or get a from my I'm just gonna get a text. We didn't have text back then. My lieutenant says the commanding officer of the base wants to meet with you. I go, oh crap, what did I do now? I have a tendency to speak my mind sometimes on the radio and TV, not during the official news, but during the movie. Um, he says you have to get your dress blues on. I go, dress blues? I have no idea where my dress blues are. I hadn't worn the dress blues in a year and a half, almost 2 years. We never wore military clothing when we were in Alaska. It was always civilian clothing. So we found them at the bottom of my sea bag. And as I pull them out, I go, oh, this looks like they've been sitting in the bottom of my sea bag for 2 years. Took them into the shower, ran the shower as hot as you could get it, steamed the clothing. Wool has a tendency to relax a little bit after you steam it. And I put on my clothing, and here, so I got down to the commander, and he gave me the Navy Commendation Medal for all the things that we did, because we raised money for the Navy Relief Fund, for the school. We held fundraisers and radiothons where we'd stay up for 24 hours and challenge people to do things like challenge the commander to walk through the sewage drainage area in his uniform and raise money for that. So I was that was my leaving Alaska, was getting that kind of recognition. And we did it not for recognition. We did it because people came to us for help. And the same with, when I was in Vietnam, people came to the Seabees for help, either in building hooches or doing electrical things, or a myriad of other things. And the Seabees say, yeah, let's do it. The Army got a cooler for their little bar, their club. But the Army electricians were going to take like 3 or 4 weeks to hook it up. As a Seabee, all I need is a pair of wire cutters and some pliers and maybe a ladder. And a couple of us went over and hooked up their cooler and got it working that night. About 3 or 4 days later, a truck shows up at our base loaded with cases of steak. We had steak. Literally, we had steak for a week. I don't think it was water buffalo. I think it was real steak.
There you
But
go.
that was their way of thanking us for helping them out. And
Absolutely.
to this day, I still get in trouble. My daughter, my youngest child, was mentioning the other day, said, "Dad, you're retired, but you're busier in retirement than you have been when you were working." I go, you know what? Because I have the inability to say no. When people come to me and they need help, they need a video produced, or they need some audio recorded, or they need help learning some sort of software. Sure. Hey, if I can do it, if I have the knowledge and I'm able to do it and help someone, that's okay. And by the way, don't give me any gift cards or anything. This is free work. So, and I keep doing it. And I guess that's one of the things the CVs taught me is, hey, if you have a skill and you're able to share it and contribute, do it. And so I continue to do that.
Absolutely. Well, it's so good to hear your story, Dennis. It's something that I think veterans tend to give back. It's just innate. Uh, but regardless of the branch and regardless of the time that you were in, it's it's an incredible thing that we were able to do. So thank you so much for doing this today. And I think we'll be signing off. How about you give your famous? There you go.
Remember, the Seabees can do.
Can do. Thank you so much.
Okay, and I'll leave with my what I thought was my idea. Turned out it wasn't, but good morning, Vietnam.
Thank you, Dennis.